Hey, welcome back to the show. I thought today we'll use the Marshall DSL20H and dial it in to try and replicate that classic JCM800 tone that Jeff Waters used on the first 3 Annihilator albums where he had his classic setup. I get asked often to try and compare the DSL20H with the JCM800, but as for a baseline tone, they're fairly different and you just dial them in different ways, but the end result is pretty similar. The DSL has so much more gain to offer on tap than the 800, and for that reason you can't really compare the base model amps. The DSL almost is like the 800 when you've got a boost in front of it and you're just really driving that front end hard, and that's how that is stock. So if you try and compare them and make a similar tone out of each, the DSL is just going to sound thin as you're having to wind the gain back so far. It just doesn't seem to have the body when the gain is below 11 o'clock. So for that reason you can get a really similar tone at the end of the day between the two heads, but you've just got to go about it a little bit differently. I'd say the JCM800 with a boost in front of it is one of my favourite tones that you can get. It's just a really balanced, sort of even, fat, punchy tone. And the DSL doesn't fall too far from that. But for today's video, I just really wanted to try and keep things really straightforward and simple. I didn't want to go through all the EQs and the effects loops and everything that we usually do. I just wanted to go really bare bones, as the tone from those first few albums is just really raw and it just captures the whole Marshall vibe really well. So dialing the DSL just to give it a really natural 800 style tone. I did notice when I was tweaking things that all this time the resonance knob, it actually adds like an unnatural element to the tone with the DSL. And since turning it right down so that it's cut out completely, I think the amp just gets a lot more sort of true, more balanced sort of tone coming out of it. You can just bring the bass up a little bit more. I usually run the bass around 2 when the resonance is on, but if you take the resonance right out of the equation, you can run the bass a little bit higher and things just sound a little bit more natural to the amp. And as far as the presence and the treble, I still like to play those two off against each other. The DSL does that really well. The presence adds sort of more like a crunchy element to the tone and the treble's just treble. But between the two, you can really get some nice blends for the right amount of hit that you want. And as for the gain, I find the sweet spot is right at 12 o'clock. And for the volume here, I'm running on the full 20 watts and the volume's about 2 or so. There's not actually any sound coming out of the speakers in the room. We're going silently through the 2 Notes Torpedo Captor X, where I'm using a Marshall 412 with V30s inside. I think it's the slash cab, it's the basic one that comes with the software, and that's got a single SM57 pushed up to it just in that software there, and that's going straight to the audio interface, and this is all the tone that you're getting. The only reverb that you're getting is the reverb from the amp as well, so it really is just a raw tone just checking out today. It's an awesome riff. I really love that song. It's just so crazy and quirky. It's just a Jeff Waters masterpiece. It's so hard to play though. So for the basic tone that Jeff had back in the day, it was just pretty much the three things. His Duncan distortion pickups are a huge player to the tone. They're ceramic magnets. They're just really sort of crunchy and hard hitting. The Boss SD1 overdrive, but he had the original overdrive with the one with the two dials. It was missing the tone knob in the middle. But from all accounts, what I've heard, it sounds exactly the same as the modern ones, just without the tone. The settings and the way that he drove that SD1 was both dials right at 12 o'clock. And usually I'd do this for the JCM800, I'd run similar sort of tone. But with the DSL, I've just really got to crack back that overdrive and bring it back from 12 o'clock through to 9 o'clock. Otherwise things just sound a little bit too messy, but you really just end up with that same sort of crunchy tone. I'm not pushing the output too much, that stays right at 12 o'clock. And it's just a really cool tone that sort of captures like little lead sections as well as rhythm parts, and it just sort of sounds well rounded. But if you do turn that drive up, it really just gets like a nicer, smoother lead tone. And that's really just to show that the settings can be used for guitar solos. It can be used in a live sense. Like it can really be blended to be a really great sort of rhythm channel / lead channel, done poorly, but still a lead channel all the same. But it's a really simple tone. You don't need a whole lot of gear just to get a really great tone out of the DSL. Doing it this way, it seems to really capture that sort of nuance of the JCM800. It's fairly hard hitting for a lot of those rhythms. There's enough grunt going on in those rhythms just to really capture a nice sort of rounded tone. But if you think that tone just needs a little bit more bass just to really push it a little bit, I'd be more inclined to run like an EQ in the effects loop. If you turn that bass control up anymore, you get almost like an unnatural sounding sort of resonance through the bass. I'll just do that now. And that actually doesn't sound too bad there, but playing through a lot of the other riffs, it just seems to have this sort of over-the-top woofy sort of tone to it. But I just find when you wind that bass back just a little tiny bit, just around there, it just seems to have a really natural sort of balanced tone across the whole head. But pretty much this is Jeff Waters' guitar tone. It's totally usable for so many different other thrash albums and things. It's just a really great tone to get out of the DSL and really basic to do. But and just before I go, a shout out to my mate on YouTube, the French thrasher, kick-ass guitar player, got a really great channel. He and his band, the Dead Tree Seeds, have just released a kick-ass album, Toxic Thoughts. You can check it out now. There's film clips. I'll have links in the description. But if you like Annihilator, I think you're right in the ballpark for the Dead Tree Seeds. But until next time, guys, take care. I'll see you. Bye. Thank you.